beyond the buzzword?
Yeah, I think the big thing is for small businesses to focus on like practical tools and reality and not just like the sci-fi rumors. We seem to have people split across like two factions. Either you have to have AI and AI can do everything better than you, or AI is going to ruin the world and it's stealing jobs and stealing art from people and super scary. Approach and saying like AI is a great tool. AI is something useful. AI can make you a more efficient version of yourself, more productive, and take away small tasks that are time wasters is really what most business owners need to focus on. So, I mean, that means things like replacing repetitive administrative tasks, making better decisions with data. AI is really good at doing research. And really making like small teams and solo entrepreneurs act like full teams, because it's almost like you have a full team of like really good interns behind you if you're using AI the right way, or really good assistants that can do things automatically for you or really help you, just be more effective at the things you're trying to do.
Perfect. Um, what are the practical ways small businesses actually use AI right now?
So, I mean, I'm a small business owner, and I can tell you the things that we do a lot with it. Automation, just having regular tasks taken care of, improving processes. So, like, we do a lot of SEO, we do a lot of AI search now. We have AI powered SEO and AI search tools that really help us monitor client sites and how clients are doing and give us faster reports back, so we get better feedback and better research and make us more effective. I think that's one part. Research is where it really shines. So when you're trying to figure out something, especially something new, maybe you want to add like a better lead follow up or outreach program to your small business, and you don't have the knowledge base for that. Like using AI to figure some of those things out can really accelerate what you're doing and make them more effective. Content writing, content ideas like brainstorming, editing things, if you need someone or something to check over content you've created or edit it faster for you. Basically saving time in general, even appointment scheduling. I'll give you a good example. I used AI to pick out a couple birthday presents this year, and the feedback was these are the best birthday presents I've ever gotten because I took the time to train the AI on the person. And since it can research the internet better than I could, it went out there and found things I never would have found in a million years. And how much time did it save me finding a really good present for someone that I could then put back into my business or my family or other things. I think those are really, as small business owners, uh, some of the simplest ways to get out there and use AI effectively.
Fantastic. What's the difference between AI tools and true automation for business operations?
Yeah, so AI tools can mean a variety of things. There's obviously different LLMs and different AI engines, and inside of those, you can make assistants and more specific tools, and they can be really helpful. And I think generally speaking, like AI tools are really good for saving you time and making you more effective. True automation is things that what it sounds like it happen automatically on a regular basis. So automation is more like sending out a personalized response to a customer, or making sure every day that a report is run or a certain process happens. AI specifically can empower automation, but like if you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, every day send me this notification, it'll kind of do okay, but AI doesn't really understand time still for the most part. So you're not going to get true automation. You're going to have to keep going in and reminding it and being like, hey, what's my daily reminder for today? It's been a day. So those are the big distinctions. As AI can kind of think, predict, research, and generate, do things like that, but it needs explicit instructions like, hey, do this for me now. Where automation is basically sequences of events and workflows that happen based on a specific trigger, whether that's the change in the calendar or you taking an action or a client taking an action. So those are really the big difference. When you combine them both, you get like amazing and powerful things. So it used to be automation look like, hey, if a client sends an email, send them this email automatically. Well, now that email can be personalized. So you can use AI to take the time to go, okay, here's the history we have with this customer. Don't just send them this generic, like, hey, customer, thanks for reaching out email. Now you can say, like, hey, I see you're asking about this. I see you bought this product. I see you've been with us a year. We're really grateful for that. Here's your response. And then I think that's where the real power comes from, is putting them both together.
Perfect. What tasks would you say should never be handed to AI?
Any of them. I would never fully handle anything to AI. And AI is a great tool and AI is really useful, but I've used AI for a lot of things and I've never seen a single use of it where it hasn't lied to me, made a mistake and tried to cover it, just been outright wrong. I'll give you some examples like research. One time I was doing client research to work on improving the conversion rate on a website and asked it to go through the website and make some recommendations. And one of the recommendations said there's a lot of products that are out of inventory. None of the products were out of inventory. And I knew that because we had just switched the setting to where none of the products could be out of inventory because they were using real time, inventory and creating products and they weren't keeping up. So they asked us to turn that off. I went back and checked and it was like, oh, yeah, you caught me. And research usually is what it's best at. So, like, there's a good example there. But I've used it for content creation, um, making a really good blog post after researching it. About halfway through, it switched it from the actual topic to giving me instructions on making a paper airplane. I think we've all seen that. One of the big examples now is look at I think it was Coca-Cola, the big campaign, where they did the Christmas campaign with the trucks, and the truck was the hero. But in every ad, the truck had a different number of wheels, a different number of cabs, a different color. And it was like, okay, well, if you're trying to do anything with consistency, AI is going to struggle. Anything that's really important to your brand, you can't count on AI for that. And really, all of it, I always tell people you have to treat AI like the best intern you could ever hire. They know things you don't know. They think in ways you don't think. They're really good at coming up with good ideas, but they're going to make mistakes and they're not always going to want to admit to those mistakes, because they're trying to figure things out and get some real world experience and they don't want to get in trouble. And they don't really have a lot of real world experience. So sometimes they're going to kind of go off the rails if you don't give them really good instructions. So all that to say, I would never let AI fully handle anything. Use it like your best assistant. Don't use it as a replacement for you. Even if you train it really, really well, it's still going to make mistakes every once in a while.
Perfect. Why is AI becoming a non-negotiable for small business survival, would you say?
Because, if any of your competitors are using it well, and they are, you're just going to get left behind. You know what I mean? Your competitors are already using it to be more efficient, more productive, figure things out faster. If you're not doing that, it's going to be like your competitors double the size of their team overnight, and you can't keep up with that kind of hiring. You can't afford that kind of payroll, and a lot of times you shouldn't. There's a lot of things AI is useful for that are like infrequent tasks, one-off tasks. Like if you're rarely designing something, if you need a flyer twice a year, you're not going to hire an in-house graphic designer for that. If you're only running a marketing campaign, once a year for Black Friday or on the holidays, you're probably not going to hire, a marketing company for that either. And sometimes it wouldn't even make sense to. But if your competitors are doing this and they're leveraging and they're becoming more effective, you're just getting left more and more behind by the day. And the problem is AI is really a tool. So the learning of AI is the bigger issue. If you're not at least using it now, you might not be using it as well as your competitors. But if you're not using it at all, and finally a year or two from now, you realize it's indispensable, you're 2 years behind the learning curve at that point and learning this tool. And it's kind of like you finally jumped on the internet 2 years too late and don't know how to use a web browser or, find a website or create a website. Like that's where you're going to be. And that's going to be a huge problem for a lot of small businesses. I don't think AI is replacing businesses or employees or teams, but people and companies and organizations that are using AI will definitely stomp out people that aren't.
Perfect. Why are small businesses hesitant to adopt AI, even when it saves time, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think as small business owners, there's always that first main issue. We don't feel like we have enough time. I think the average small business owner is already busy. They're already keeping their day full. And it's that standard, like, I don't have time to even set up something that'll save me time. And that's, the first step. We all have to get everyone away with that. And I think it's like, what's that old adage? Like a normal person should meditate 10 minutes a day. A person that's too busy to meditate should do it 30 minutes a day. Like the minute you understand that you have to prioritize something like this that's important, it's just like creating processes for your business. Like you have to create processes for your business or you lose a lot of efficiencies and it can't grow. So if you decide you're too busy to create those processes, you're just holding your business back and you'll always be too busy. It's the same thing with AI. If you're too busy to set it up, you're always going to be too busy because you're just going to get left behind, and then you'll be scrambling to keep up, and you won't be able to. So I think that's the first piece. The other piece is just, I think, the fear of the unknown and the new. People are afraid AI is going to replace them, replace their job. You see these, layoffs that are supposedly happening because of AI. And I don't think that's true. I think that the big tech layoffs we're seeing are the same as the big tech layoffs we saw 3 or 4 years ago. It was just an industry that had grown too quick and is changing rapidly, and there's people in it that just, unfortunately, aren't as effective as others, like every other industry. So I think getting past that fear of, AI taking your job, taking your business, taking over the world, whatever these big fears are we have, is a big thing. And then, a lot of business owners are already overwhelmed by the tools they have. A lot of business owners are already using, I think they say on average, like the average tech stack for a business is like 30 pieces or something crazy like that. And they're already struggling with logins and keeping up with it all. So I think that's kind of the final piece, is believing they can even use another tool effectively or take the time to learn it. And then obviously, kind of going back to the last thing we talked about, if you don't have time to check it, you've got concerns about accuracy. Is it going to lie? Is it going to say things that are wrong about my business? Is it going to do things I don't want it to do? And the truth is, if you train it up front, it's probably not going to. But yeah, just like if you hired an employee, you still got to check them once in a while. Like my real human employees, I got to check their work once in a while, even the ones I trust with my business, because they still make mistakes just like I do.
Very true. Why does AI often produce inconsistent results for first-time users?
Yeah, so AI again is just like a really good intern or employee. And if you just went to a new person in your business and you were like, hey, go build me an ad, you're not going to get back exactly what you want. And even if you take a little bit more time and you're like, here's our branding and here's our message and here's our general ideas and here's how we want to do it, now go build me an ad, they're still not going to know the way you want to do it. So with AI, it's a lot of garbage in, garbage out. So taking the time to let your AI get to know you, a lot of people just have like full conversations with AI for hours, where if you have a lot of content online, just feed it all your videos, let it get to know your voice, the words you use, what's important to you. Feed it all your blog posts if you have them. Feed them your employee manual if you wrote it. But give it that foundational, like, okay, this is what's important to us. This is how we think. This is how we talk, and teach it. So just like an employee, you've got to teach it first if you want to get better, consistent results. You also want to kind of limit its knowledge base in some cases. So if you think about it, a lot of people are using like a chat GPT. Well, that means it's referencing the whole world. So it's referencing people you wouldn't agree with. It's referencing resources you wouldn't agree with. It's referencing things you would consider wrong. So getting in there and taking the time to say, like, here's how we do things. These are the only places I want you to get information from. Give it that better knowledge base will fix the other side of that too. And sometimes it's just that you picked the wrong AI. Like, we have the chat GPTs and, Claudes and Geminis, which are these big LLMs that are like general use. But a lot of times there's tools that are more specific, that are better for certain uses. And sometimes it just wasn't set up right. Like, I had a recent experience. I went on Lowe's online to fix a situation. And of course, I got the AI first and asked me these questions, and I had a conversation. And then it said it can't help me, so it switched me to a human person. And the human person told me they couldn't see the entire conversation. They just had the AI. So I was like, well, you should probably talk to your manager, because that was a huge waste of time. And I don't have time to explain all this to you all over again. So I just canceled my order and left. Again, that wasn't even the AI's fault. It's just that it wasn't given the tools it needed. The person that was working with AI wasn't given the tools they needed. And so it could have been a really great experience, just turned into a whole mess. So I think those are really the big things, is just you have to take the time to understand the tool, to teach the tool, and to implement the tool correctly, like any other tool, or you're going to get inconsistent results you might not be happy with. Oh, I can't hear you again.
Sorry. How should how should a small business start implementing AI, even if they have zero technical background?
Yeah, so I think for the average person, especially if you have no technical background, Look at a tool like a chat GPT that's more like a general, and just start talking to it and asking it questions and getting comfortable with the tool. I think that's the biggest thing is if you don't have time for that or you think you don't have time for it, which is more realistic, like you can now use voice. So you could have a conversation with chat GPT on your way home and ask it like, hey, I don't think I have time to mow my lawn. I don't think I have time to do my bookkeeping, and I'm still doing that. How can I make this faster? Like, what's a better plan for, managing my home, managing my business, managing my personal life? Like the example I gave before, I need some really good ideas. I mean, right now for Christmas presents, like I've got 10 people to buy for. I don't have time to figure it all out, but I can, while I'm driving in my car, I can tell you about these 10 people. And then when I get home, I can have this list to look at that, ChatGPT made for me that says, here are some really great ideas for those people, and I can really save time on my Christmas shopping. And now I made the time that I needed to implement that AI. So that's one good place to start if you have no technical background, because it's super easy. You just get the app on your phone and talk to it. The next thing really is just start with one task. I would tell people typically for hiring, like, what is the lowest skilled, biggest time waster, and maybe lowest to medium impact thing in your business that you do all the time, create a system for that, and then hire somebody. Well, what is that you could talk to ChatGPT about and maybe have it take off your plate? If you're spending 2 hours a week, doing some sort of accounting process that you're not really good at, or creating social media posts that takes you a long time, or anything, a schedule for your employees, or trying to figure things out, like talk to it about how it could help you do that 2 hour task maybe in 10 minutes. And it probably can. So now you solve that one small task, and now you've got almost 2 hours back from your week that you could do more with on AI, or maybe actually hire somebody, or whatever makes sense, or just enjoy your free time. I think that's a really good place to start. And the other good way is if a lot of tools now are implementing AI already just to make them a little more efficient. So test that out. If you're already using, an accounting tool, or, a lot of web builders now, marketing tools are building AI in, and they're not always great, but you can start with it and just learn the limitations. I think that's a great place to sit there and say, okay, maybe AI can't build me a whole website or landing page on its own, but it can help me with these parts and do a good job and get me a faster start. And I can see that because, I've got a website and I tried to use it to help me make a new page. So I think for most small businesses, those are the places they should start implementing AI.
How do you choose which parts of your business to automate with AI first?
Yeah, I think kind of like we talked about on the last part, anything that, wastes time on a regular basis or that you don't enjoy doing, wasting time is a tough thing because I'm sure you're doing it, it's important. But, if you don't enjoy it, if it seems kind of low skill, if it seems like something that would be hard to mess up and you have to do it regularly, especially daily, that's one of the things I would look at first. Another thing is things you're not getting to. Like a lot of us have like lead lists that we haven't ever followed up with people from, or customer inquiry lists that we sent one follow-up email, didn't hear back from, or maybe we've got a list of notes or books from an event that we meant to read that we need to organize. That's also a really great place to do that. Any kind of like repetitive messaging that you have to do, if you're sending out regular messages to clients or employees, it can take care of that. Reporting or data entry, building better systems for that. Like if you have like a really antiquated spreadsheet that doesn't actually do things the way you want them to, and you have to do a lot of manual entries, like I used AI a year ago, to create formulas for spreadsheets that I could never have come up with, to really give me an easier way to look at my data. I think those are the kind of things that you can do. And start with and get comfortable with. And again, personal life stuff too, like, hey, help me find this product, or hey, help me find a person that can do this for me, or, help me find a perfect gift for a client, or help me find this thing for myself that's going to solve this problem. Those are really good places to start for most business owners.
Perfect. How can a business owner tell the difference between AI hype and AI that actually can help?
I think the easiest way is any AI tool or someone talking about a tool that says like, it can do all of this for you. That tells you right there it's hype. Like, again, I have never seen any AI tool that can completely handle something from start to finish 100% of the time. Like, they all have issues, they all have limitations, they all make mistakes. So right off the bat, if you see that, you can kind of tell, at least for that tool, it's hype. And I think anything that says, it's gonna take over the world or change on the flip side, like, anything that says it's horrible and it's gonna steal and ruin your business and make you fire all our people is also hype. As far as useful AI, like, is it a tool that saves you time? Is it a tool that takes things off your hands that seem boring or monotonous that maybe you can't hire out yet? Does it directly help your sales or operations results? Is it something that's helping you, qualify leads better, find leads faster, or manage all your incoming emails a little bit better and get through, one of the tools I really like is we use AI as like a first screener on our phone, and it takes care of all the spam calls for me. I think that's a really good first tool. Like, people don't always want to talk to AI, but if you use that as the gatekeeper rather than just a standard recording, it can be really helpful. And I think the big thing is just anything that sounds cool, more than seems useful to your business. Like, there's a lot of really fun AI tools out there, that can help you make like cool videos and, cool pictures. But if you don't actually have a business use for that, then for you, that's, it's hype. It's just fun. And that doesn't mean you can't try it. It just means it's probably not a useful business tool.
Perfect. How do you train AI systems to match your brand voice and process?
Give it as many examples as possible. I think that's the big thing. So here, if you have well documented systems, if you have, a brand kit, if you have a mission statement, if you have your values all laid out, this will be pretty easy. If you don't, on the flip side, the great thing is you can use AI to create all those. So, again, have that conversation with it, even if it's on your way home in the car, and say, this is what really matters to me. This is what I think our business does and should be doing. These are our values. These are what matters. And then ask it to help you create those pieces. And on the same side, if you don't have great branding yet, ask it to research top voices in your industry. What colors are they using? What fonts are they using? What styles are they using? And then come back to you with some ideas based on what it finds for your business and work through that. And then once you've done that, you have this great brand kit put together faster than you could have ever done it before. And it may still be a little amateurish, but it's still way better than not having it at all. And you can feed that into AI then and say, here are our standards for branding. Here are our standards for style and voice. And if, you want to get really exciting, you can take that and bring it to a professional who can fine tune it for you and make it really good and then feed that in. But, if you're a typical a small business owner that's just never done that, like, that's a really good process to have that conversation, have it research, big voices in the industry, build all those pieces out that are pretty important, and then have it help you understand how to implement that, both generally so that it sticks to that going forward, but also if you didn't have those, then they weren't on your website, so people cannot see them. If you didn't have those, then your mission and your vision and your values were not in your employee materials and they weren't in your employee communication. So you can have it help you implement all those, which is great. The other thing is just generally, if you're just looking for general voice, if you don't have a lot of content out there, if you don't have videos and posts and things like that, you can feed it old emails, feed it old posts and scripts you've used for different things. And then just, when it gives you output, correct it. Come back and say, I wouldn't have answered it this way. I would have answered it that way. Make sure it's in learning mode while you do that. If you're just using general AI, or, use that to build yourself an agent if it's for a specific reason. But that's basically it, is, give it as many examples of what you consider good, matching your brand, matching your values, matching, those things up front, and then take a little time, just like you would with an employee, like, here's what's important to us, give it some feedback, give it some correction. And then that's how you get an AI that will consistently match your brand, voice, images, colors, etc. when you're asking it to help you write emails or create social media posts or whatever you're going to use it for.
Perfect. How can AI tools work in unison or together and not become just a random tech pile?
Yeah, so I think you have a few options there. First, there's vibe coding. So, with AI tools, you can have vibe code like a central piece of software or a custom piece of software that really fixes a lot of your problems. So you don't have as many tools needed anymore. Like we've done that recently, is just created some specific tools to solve problems we needed that we were using these huge platforms for. And now we have this one tool that's just there for this one process, does a really good job, and isn't super cluttered and crazy. The other thing you can do is just actually using AI to connect the tools you're already using. So, if you're already using automation platforms, if you're already using, different marketing tools, if you're already using bookkeeping tools that just aren't talking to each other, AI can either manually make those processes faster. So if you're every week going into your bank and manually copying over your bank statements into some sort of spreadsheet or into some sort of, bookkeeping software and then analyzing, I can do all that for you on like one click, basically. Or you can, if you're talking about like maybe I use a big CRM like, High Level or HubSpot, and it just doesn't have these two features I need. So I need to connect it over here, but Zapier doesn't have the exact, connection I need, and I don't know how to custom code that. You can definitely use AI to help you build that connection, code that connection, set that up, or ask it if there's a more efficient way to do that. But I think that's the big thing is don't get every tool. Don't get shiny object syndrome. You don't need every single tool. Even I probably use 7, on a regular basis, and we're doing everything. We're vibe coding, we're running marketing agencies, we're helping businesses, we're writing content. But we all use them all for very specific things that's built in our process, which ones we use for which. But we could have 100, at this point. Everyone could. There's so many AI tools out there now. So just like we were talking about before, like just because it looks cool, don't get it, because you're not going to be able to effectively use it. So as long as you're focused about which AI tools you're using and using them to build systems and, save yourself time and improve your business, I think that's really the most effective way to do that. Is if they fit into your business processes, then they're not just going to become clutter. If you're buying them just because they seem cool or fun or interesting, but don't actually have a purpose for them yet, then they're just going to clutter up your desk and, make your life harder in the long run, because you're going to get frustrated that you bought something else you're not using.
Good point. Um, which AI tools do you think small businesses overuse or underuse?
Honestly, I think all of them could fit into that category. So if you think about it, like if you're using ChatGPT for everything, if you're, a solopreneur and you're not doing anything super complicated, that could be really smart. It could cover a lot of your bases. And if you're not using ChatGPT for anything, that's probably not smart. Because like I know, I'll give you an example with, vibe coding or creating software solutions. ChatGPT is really good at creating responses for other programs. So if you say, hey, I want to build a piece of software to fix this problem for my company, I'm going to use Replit, or I'm going to use, Gemini, or I'm going to use Claude, or whatever you think makes the most sense. I know a lot of people are using Claude now since the update. Having a discussion with ChatGPT up front, it can create the prompts for you to make that more effective. And even with like agentic AI like Manus, which are these programs that have different agents built in and supposedly can do everything in one, and they do a pretty good job, you still need really specific, clear prompts for these programs. And as humans, we're not always good at being specific and clear, because we, talk in around circles and don't always want to be direct, because it's not always considered polite, in day-to-day conversation. So getting that help for that is really smart. So I think, in that example and in most examples, you have the ability to overuse or underuse any of them. I think the big thing is, just making sure you know when you're using tools if you have more than one, and sticking to that. So I think generally speaking, AI tools are underused for task automation, CRM connections and automation, research, predictive type tools, search automation, running your systems, connecting them all and making sure you're managing them well. Like we use an SEO tool, and one of the things it really just does is just check our sites regularly and come back and say, hey, here's some things you probably could do to improve that. Like there's a lot of tools out there for businesses that could just regularly monitor your P&Ls, your sales, your profit margins, your inventory, and come back with recommendations. So generally speaking, I think those kind of tools are still very much underused. And you can kind of see that because like McKinsey came out with that report, I think a week ago. And basically it was like 83% of businesses have implemented AI and like 12% of them are actually using it to scale or grow in a logical way. So I think, again, we're seeing in general, they might all be overused, just not being used effectively yet. And I think that could apply to all of them. So again, make sure you pick tools that make sense for your business, your processes that you have, and that aren't just shiny objects.
Good call. What business types usually end up getting the fastest ROI from AI implementation?
I think small businesses in general, especially when you're talking like under 5 employees, because when you're that small, you definitely don't have like a marketing department, a financial person that's truly dedicated beyond maybe like a bookkeeper. You don't have someone that can do research typically and check your competitors regularly. You don't have, well, I mean, you might have someone in sales that's following up with leads, but you probably don't have a dedicated person. And even that salesperson, if you have one, they probably could use help, qualifying leads, researching leads, keeping on top of them so they can personalize their outreach and their messaging to them. So I think, very small businesses, number one, because if you can go in immediately and take one of those things off your, desk, and then now you have an extra 5 hours a week to dedicate to what you're best at, that's going to help you grow your business faster. And then in general, I think, local trades businesses, that need more efficient ways of putting proposals together. If you're going around a house and measuring things and then trying to manually calculate that and then put a proposal together based on that and then send that proposal out, when you could kind of do most of that in one click, and maybe that you even take a tool that estimates the measurements for you just by taking a picture. I think that's a huge thing for like your home services and local trades. I think marketing agencies, we were one of the earliest adapters for AI because it makes sense for what we're doing. And, I think it has had a huge impact on how efficient we can be. And, what kind of work we do for our customers. We're definitely able to do a lot more work at a lot higher level now because we leverage AI tools. I think, service businesses in general, real estate businesses can do really well because there's a lot of facets to real estate as far as like trying to find people before they sell their house, trying to find people that need to buy a house, trying to research what properties are out there on the market that might fit your buyers, trying to make sure you're keeping up with local trends. Like there's a lot of things like that that AI could be useful for. And then I think anyone that has like a lot of phone calls, emails, text messages coming in. One of the first things I ever did with AI was someone came to us and they were selling on Facebook Marketplace and just overwhelmed with the over repeated questions and inquiries. And, they were going to buy a website that was going to cost them a lot of money to fix it. And I was like, if you get a website, it's just going to give you even more questions in another place. If your real problem is just answering these messages, how about we get an AI tool that you can train in the way you would answer questions, and then it can take that off your plate. And we found a tool for $10 a month, that did that for her. So, I mean, and that was a side business for someone with a very good career. So any business, any organization that just gets a lot of inquiries, they're going to get a huge ROI from AI as soon as they implement it.
Perfect. When should businesses avoid using AI?
I think, I don't think there's any businesses generally that should avoid it, but I think there's a lot of tasks you need to be careful, especially if you're, trying to let AI do it all, like we talked about before. Never let AI do the whole thing. But I do think specifically, especially if you're not going to take the time to train and update your AI, if judgment matters, AI is still not at the point where it can use like human judgment patterns. It can definitely do research and take information and put it together for you, but it's still not quite where it thinks like a human. So if you're taking someone or a situation or a client where they're going to give you information and you need to use your judgment before you respond to them, that's probably not a good place for it. And that's why you see like email tools now. I don't think there's any email tools that just automatically answer an email. There's email tools that organize it and prepare a response for you, but they don't have that ability to just 100% off the cuff, use their best judgment and answer an email for you. And same thing, tone. I don't think we're quite to the point where they've gotten tone down. It's getting better. Like I set my ChatGPT to the sarcastic setting or whatever, because in my family, sarcasm's like our love language, and it made sense for me. And it definitely like gets the tone and makes it a little more interesting, but it's still sometimes the responses don't make a lot of sense when it's trying to be human and interesting. Anything that needs a lot of accuracy, like we talked about before, like it might run off and start talking about paper airplanes or make up a statistic, or pull a bad link in. You're still seeing a lot of those situations. So, obviously anything related to a legal situation or a medical situation, or like an investor situation where numbers and data and facts are really, really important. You can certainly use AI to start it, but you can't let it sit there and just send it off without checking, did it actually pull real data? Are these links actually accurate? And I think anytime you need a real human connection. So, if you're running a business or if you have the potential where people are in sensitive situations, um, if you're running like a care facility and people are asking about, needing help with their parents, I would not let AI, automatically answer those kind of messages. Or updates, same thing, like, hey, how's my mom doing? Who was really sick? Those kind of things. You can get HIPAA compliant AI, but I definitely still would not use it to answer like medical questions that matter in sensitive areas. I think those are like the main categories, but again, I would never use AI to 100% do anything at all as a business, just to reiterate that point.
Good point. Who benefits most from AI inside of a company? The owner, employees, or customers, would you say?
I think all of them do. I mean, as an owner, again, especially for like rare tasks or one-off tasks where you can't justify hiring somebody, it definitely lets you leverage your costs a little more effectively. It saves you the time of, the hiring process, which can be, a whole thing. If you can just get people in your team that are really good at leveraging AI and then solve those one-off situations again, like whether it's designing a social media post or a flyer for a once-a-year event, or coming up with brainstorming ideas for something new you need to do, or doing some basic research. Those kind of things are huge for business owners. And I think on the same track for employees, if you're an employee right now, you have to learn how to leverage AI or you will not have a job. So like that's reality. AI is not going to replace employees, but it's definitely going to replace employees that refuse to use it, won't use it, aren't good at using it, because it can take all the busy work off you as an employee. So, all those things that you consider time wasters, your boss also considers a time waster. They just have to be done. Well, if you can get those time wasters off your schedule, now you can focus on doing better, good work all the time. You become more effective, the company becomes more effective, and then both of you benefit from that. And then even if you move on, being able to say like, hey, I did this with AI, I did this with AI, even putting it on your resume, I mean, people are going to be looking for that soon. They are. So I think being able to say, I have these case studies, I have these examples where I used AI to do this amazing thing, because the things you did before that were really great, people are just going to pass you by because they can do 8 times more now. So you have to prepare for that. And then I think customers in the right situations, obviously AI can answer the phone 24 hours a day. AI can answer basic questions 24 hours a day. AI can start customer service inquiries, right away. So I think as key stakeholders, those are the three that benefit the most from implementing AI in a business, especially if you implement it correctly.
Perfect. Perfect. Time for two more here. Number one is why do some businesses try AI once and think this didn't work?
I think it's like anything else. I think Alex Hormozy had a really good story where he said someone convinced him he should do flyers, and he printed 500 flyers and put them on cars. And he got like one phone call, and it was somebody just yelling at him for putting a flyer on his car. And he went back to the guy that told him to do it, and he was like, I printed 500 flyers and I put them out. And the guy was like, we're putting out 30,000 flyers a day. Like, why would you do something 500 times and think it was a complete failure? I think that's the big thing is, people come out, they don't know how to use the tool. They probably don't have the right AI tool because they haven't used it enough to even know which AI tool they need. And then they're like, hey, do this thing for me. And it's not perfect. And again, it's just like hiring a new employee and giving their very first task without a lot of training, without a lot of information, and then firing them because they made a mistake on their first task. I think you kind of got to look at it like that. So I think for business owners, it's easy for us to get frustrated typically because we always feel like we're too busy. We always feel like we're spending too much time and money on things. We always feel like we're behind the eight ball. So it's easier for us to get in and try something and say that didn't work. I'm just getting rid of it and go back to what we're comfortable with. Just like everything else in life, everyone defaults to comfort when they're stressed. So I think that's why it is so easy. But short version, I think a lot of times they use the wrong tool. They didn't train the tool or give it any context. Maybe they expected some like magic perfect thing to come out of it the first time. And they didn't take the time to train it by either giving it enough information up front or working with it to refine their prompts or refine its actions or help it understand what they really wanted. I think those are really the big things. But bottom line is business owners, we just don't think we have enough time. So it's really easy for us to look at something in kind of a jaded perspective and go, well, it didn't do exactly what I wanted exactly the first time. Like, that was a waste of time, and move on.
Yeah, for sure. And then finally, what was your turning point moment when you realized that AI would reshape your entire approach to digital marketing?
So I think for us, the benefit of being in digital marketing was our industry was a really early adapter. Like years and years ago, there was, I guess it was Jarvis at first and then Jasper, which was this content writing tool that was, adapted early on. And it was pretty terrible in the beginning, and then it got better and then it got better. And I don't even know if they still exist because basically every AI tool can do what they do now. But I think, right off the bat, even when it was bad, coming up with like campaign ideas, like, hey, I need some good headlines for this Facebook campaign. And it would come up with 10 and 9 would be terrible, but 1 would be something I never thought of. And even that was really great. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this little tool that was terrible 5 years ago still was useful for brainstorming ideas I might not have thought of. And back then it was, all the issues you see now, it was 10 times worse. It would, completely make up things like, I remember using it for a realtor client and asking it to do a property description, and it started adding in that the house had a hot tub and, a basement that it didn't have. And, it was like these great, really descriptive posts, but it was like, imagine drinking your coffee overlooking the ocean. And I'm like, this property is in West Virginia, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, But, even at that point, you can kind of see that this was going to become a thing. And then I would say probably a year ago, like the second version of ChatGPT and some of the tools we're using now came in, and it was like, okay, like now they're writing content that's actually, 95% usable. They're doing research that's faster and pretty good. And it's kept improving from there. So I would say right around there was when I was like, this is something we need to implement. And then since then, like really just seeing how much of my workload it could automate, how I can come in every day and have these agents that are like, hey, here's what we already found for you. Here's some ideas for what you need to do today. Here's your task list. Like I use AI now to optimize my calendar, and it just says like, here's what you should probably focus on next, which is great. Don't have to use any brain power about even figuring out what to do next on my project and task list. And really just seeing how much better work we could do for clients at the same time and financial investment, because now we can leverage these tools and get people better results and more for their money, which is our big thing. Most of our clients are small business owners, so they don't have these huge budgets. They have to ROI. So being able to turn around and go, hey, like we just started doing this for you for free, and look, it's getting you more leads because we can. Didn't cost us anything. We can pass that through and really help out our clients. So I think those were probably the biggest turning points for me. But, also just realizing that everybody in my industry was using it. So it was like I knew, specifically we were going to get left behind if we didn't do it. So it was that mix of like, okay, like we need to keep up with this for ourselves and for our customers. And also, hey, it's actually becoming really effective. Those were the two biggest things for me that I was like, hey, I've got to use this, I've got to learn it, and I've got to experiment with it until we're really, really, really good at using it.